This is episode 4 of the Relentless Man podcast, Consistency. Welcome to the Relentless Man podcast. I'm your host, Christian Mojaiso. My goal is to help you become the man you need to become in order to accomplish your goals. To do this, I will have to be very raw and brutally honest with you. If you're easily offended, stop listening. If you're easily triggered, stop listening. If you can't handle explicit language, stop listening. If you are fragile, stop listening. Otherwise, let's dig in. A community member named Adi asks, how can I become consistent? This entire episode is dedicated towards exploring this question of consistency. Now, in this episode, we are going to recommend things to Adi. Certainly we'll do that. However, what we will not do is tell Adi what to do. Why? Because he has a brain and can make his own decisions. Let's begin the exploration process here. When Adi asks about consistency, he's really talking about consistency of action. Let's say you're a physics student and you've just started the semester and you realize that in order to do well in this physics class, you have to work 2 hours every day for the entire semester. And you'd have to start at 4 p.m. exactly and end at 6 p.m. If every single day for the entire semester you showed up at 4 p.m., you studied and thought about physics for an hour, and at 6 p.m. you stopped, and you did not fail on a single day, we would say that you have behaved consistently. If, however, let's say having worked for a month and a half into the semester, you've been going really strong and actually every time starting at 4 and ending at 6 and working for the 2 hours that you said you would. And then one day you're feeling a little under the weather, you're just not feeling it, you're a little depressed, you're feeling all sorts of pressure, and so you decide maybe just for this Saturday you're not really going to spend time working on physics. You're gonna just relax and rest your brain. Immediately you do this, you have stopped being consistent. So Adi is asking us really, how do I behave consistently? An important thing to think about is, why is consistency important? There are, of course, out there in the world many things that would be really nice to have, but are not necessarily fundamental. Is consistency, we know it's important, but the question really becomes, how important is it? How primal is consistency towards you achieving your goals? In order to understand better why consistency is absolutely important, it's nice to understand what happens when one is not consistent. Let's say you're a basketball player and you're part of a team and you meet your coach and your coach tells you, in order to be productive and support the team in the way it needs, you're going to have to learn how to dribble the basketball. You're going to have to learn how to pass the basketball. You're going to have to learn how to shoot 3-pointers. You're going to have to learn how to do layups. And you're going to have to learn how to shoot free throws. So the coach tells you this. And naturally, you're new to the team, so you're super excited. You want to show the coach what an exceptional player you are. So you buckle down and you actually practice. You learn how to shoot 3-pointers. You learn how to dribble. You become actually very good at doing layups and you master all the stuff he told you to. Except when it comes to this minor detail. You realize, okay, fine, you've been putting in the work, but you're kind of tired. And besides, how often do free throws come up in games? They do come up, but your other superior skills in making 3-point shots and passing are going to compensate, you say, for this not really perfect capacity to make free throws. Let's evaluate the consequences of such behavior. Now you find yourself in a game and the game is critical, perhaps a championship deciding game. Your team makes a basket, the opponent's team makes a basket, your team makes a basket, your opponent's team makes a basket. You go back and forth, and let's say you're now tied, you're level. And then you get fouled. And now you're asked to make a free throw. You make a free throw and you miss. But it's no big deal. People miss free throws in games. It happens. But then you get fouled again and you miss. And you get fouled again and you miss. And suddenly the coach is looking and thinking, the opposing team's coach finally catches on and realizes, holy crap, this guy can't actually make free throws. Guess what happens next? He calls a timeout with his team, tells them whenever they find you with the ball, they should tackle you. And they should foul you. No big deal. So indeed, that's what they do. They foul you, and every time you're asked to make a free throw, you freaking miss it. And now your team actually ends up losing. So obviously all your teammates are completely pissed at you because they can't understand why the heck you can't make free throws. And your coach is obviously livid. He's wondering why, despite telling you to practice and learn how to make free throws, you chose not to. And obviously now your reputation is in jeopardy because now no one really knows if you know your stuff or not. And why did this happen? This happened because you chose to ignore what seemed like a minor detail. Just making free throws? What's the big deal? I know how to do all this other stuff, and that really screwed you up. This is an example of where behaving inconsistently was costly not only to you, but to the team and towards your career, say, in basketball in this particular case. Let's say you're an engineer and you have the task of constructing a bridge. Now, we know that engineering is not easy, and constructing a bridge is not an easy task. There's a lot involved in making this sort of thing happen. You'd have to get the right people to work with you. You'd have to make sure these people are competent. You'd have to convince government officials to allow you to build this bridge. You'd have to look for funding from somewhere. Not to talk of the thinking that's required in order to construct a bridge. You'd have to understand the environment, the weather patterns, design the curvature of the bridge, so many details. And this is the sort of project that very easily could take 3 to 4 years. Very complicated project depending on how large the bridge has to be. And let's say you actually really buckle down here. You get the funds, you convince the politicians that they need to build this bridge. You get the right people with you actually, and you personally vet the people working on the project. You coordinate them and you make all these things happen. And then one day, after having been working for 3.5 years, really consistently, not really taking time off, a package comes in, and that's the metals that are going to be used to construct the bridge. And you read there the document. The manufacturing company that sent you the metals tells you about the expansion and contraction rate of these metals. Normally, you're supposed to go and check this for yourself, figure out really what are the limits of this metal before building with it. But this time you decide you're too tired, you could trust the company, and for this one thing, you decide not to really focus in on the detail and make sure you understand the expansion and contraction of the metals you're going to use to construct the bridge. And now let's think about what happens next. It's Christmas Day, it's really cold, some poor driver is on this bridge, other people on the bridge as well, and suddenly, since it's winter, it's snowing. And so the metals that were used for the bridge actually contract, and they contract to a much smaller degree than the manufacturing company said they would. And now guess what happens next? The metal begins to break. The bridge becomes unstable. The driver and everybody on the bridge crash into each other, some of them losing their lives. Complete and total mayhem has basically ensued. Guess what happens to you at this point? Well, one, your reputation is gone. No one will ever trust you to construct anything. You're obviously now being investigated. People are trying to take your head basically and put you in jail. And why did all of this happen? This happened because you chose to ignore a detail. You did not behave in a consistent way. Now obviously you're saying to yourself, but Christian, these are very extreme examples. Actually they're not. If you're gonna do any project of value, I'm not talking about 1 week project. On a 1 week project, you can wing it. You could chill out for most of the time and then work a day before the project and make it done. But when we talk about projects of great importance, projects that transform lives, the sorts of projects that one is proud of, those projects very typically take something in the order of 10, 15, 20 years. With these kinds of projects, it's just not possible to produce exceptional results or achieve these sorts of goals without being able to execute and act consistently. So I don't want to keep on beating a dead horse here. So I hope it's completely clear now why consistency is important. It's not just a nice thing to have. It is primal and basic for anyone who wants to accomplish goals that are worth having. The next step in our exploration of the concept of consistency is an idea. We'd have to introduce the notion of belief versus practice. Please bear with me here. You'll see exactly why it connects with consistency. Think about something like waking up in the morning. So let's say you've set an alarm and the alarm rings at 8 a.m. and you're supposed to wake up. Think about the activity of sitting up on your bed, putting your feet on the ground and stepping off the bed and taking a walk and doing whatever else you had set to do. Is that something that requires practice? Is it complicated? Is it complicated to wake up in the morning? Is it complicated do you need to go to a seminar or attend lectures or read books to learn how to, whenever your alarm rings, get out of bed? Well, the answer is no. For most people, the answer is no. Of course, there are people who can't move. That's different. But for the vast majority of us, getting out of bed when the alarm rings is not a complex task. That is something we can do. Things that we can do and do not need practice and that are not complicated, things like, for example, getting out of bed, we are going to call those beliefs. So waking out of bed, we are going to call getting out of bed when the alarm rings, we are going to call a belief. Now we have the other category that's going to be important to us, the idea of practice. A practice, we call something a practice if it's the sort of thing that is complex, such that we cannot do it now and need to take a bunch of steps and actually practice in order to master it. An example would be something like boxing. To be an exceptional boxer, there are a lot of skills involved, right? You'd have to understand the movement, study the body language of your opponent. Another thing would be to be really important to protect one's face when one is under attack, because otherwise you receive punches and your career is much shorter than it should have been. And there's obviously things like footwork. The point is there's a lot of things involved in playing in order to become a good boxer. So boxing is not the sort of thing that if you didn't know any boxing, you don't just wake up in the morning and suddenly you're a great boxer. Absolutely not. It's not like waking up. Waking up, anybody can do. Pick up a 5-year-old, just tell them whenever this device here makes a sound, get out of bed. Even a 5-year-old is going to be able to do it. It's not complicated to get out of bed when the alarm rings. On the other hand, boxing is genuinely complicated. It's something that is a practice. You need to learn a bunch of skills in order to do it. And usually with boxing, obviously, it's something on the order of years, 5, 10, 15 years to master and become really good at boxing. So let's go in depth to this idea of belief versus practice. Consider something like not stealing. Let's say it was really important to you not to steal. Let's say you are having trouble with stealing and you want to stop stealing. First question to ask is not stealing a belief or is it a practice? Well, do you need training not to steal? I mean, you enter into a room and someone has left their phone on the table. You could steal it by picking the phone or you could leave it there. Is not picking up the phone something complicated? Would you need to attend a seminar, read a bunch of books, talk to your guru, visit a psychiatrist, just in order to learn how to not pick up a phone? Well, the answer is no. For most people, that is something that is easy to do. You just don't pick up the phone. No training required, it's instinctive. That is not the sort of thing one practices. There are no steps involved in mastering not picking up or stealing objects. Not stealing is something we'd call a belief and not a practice. How about being an A student? Someone tells you, I am an A student. Is being an A student a belief or a practice? Well, are you just an A student now, or is being an A student something one has to work towards? Well, obviously, there's probably someone who's thinking, no, I'm actually who I am. I'm just an A student. This is me. Well, is that really true? Let's think about that. If you're getting all A's on your exams now, it's because your exams are the sorts of things that are within your skill set. We can certainly envision making the exam sufficiently hard so that you don't get an A on it. And what do you think happens then, right? Because if someone internalizes the identity, I am an A student, and then we present them with a bunch of tests that keep kicking their butt, they keep failing at the tests, then suddenly this identity and belief is being challenged because it's not consistent with what they're experiencing. They tell themselves, I'm an A student, but every time they're failing because the exam is too hard. So with something like an exam, it would be something that one practices. If one has an exam and they fail at it, they'd have to design strategies and think of things they need to do in order to get an A on the test. It would be something that is a practice, not a belief. You're not just automatically an A student. It's something you work towards. It's a process. So let's say someone really wanted to be an A student. Well, we've just seen that it would not serve them to think of themselves or to have the identity of I'm an A student, because they'll just suffer a lot of pain every time they encounter exams or challenges that are really hard and beyond their current skill level, significantly so. So what would they do then if you really wanted to become an A student and you're looking for the right belief system to do that? Well, rather than saying I'm an A student, you could say instead, I'm the sort of person who does whatever I can in order to get a good grade on the test. I study in advance. This is who I am. Something like giving it your absolute best is something that you don't need to be taught. You don't need a seminar. You don't need to read books. Giving your absolute best is what we would call a belief. It is something that requires no training. And it's the sort of belief that would enable you, say, to become an A student if that is indeed your goal. Let's think about something else, like eating salad. Is eating salad a belief or a practice? Do you need training and specialized attention in order to learn how to eat a salad? Think about it. What does eating a salad really involve? You have some plate or object, you have a bunch of leaves placed on it, and eating a salad involves just grabbing the leaves and placing them in your mouth. Is that something you can do? Well, for most people, yes, unless you're somehow paralyzed. But for most people, that is something they can do. To pick up a bunch of leaves and place them in their mouth, that they can do. They do not need to read books. They do not need to attend seminars. They don't need to visit a psychiatrist in order to learn how to get a piece of salad and put it in your mouth. That is something that is a belief and not a practice. So let's get a little more practical. Let's say you realize you don't like the way your health is and you want to become healthier. But at the moment, and let's say you do research and realize that the first thing you need to do, your step number one in order to become healthy, in order to accomplish your goal of becoming healthy, is to start by eating salad. And so you want to adopt this belief system of, I am the person that eats salad. I eat salad. Well, how would you do that? First thing would be to realize that eating salad is an identity and not a belief, and it's something that you can't do. Next thing, immediately you say to yourself, I eat salad, there's going to be a voice that comes in your brain. And that voice is the critic. The critic will say, what are you talking about? You eat salad? When was the last time you freaking ate salad? Weren't you at McDonald's 2 hours ago? What are you talking about? The critic is the voice that stops us. You could think of it as our bullshitometer. We all have it. It's the voice that whenever we say stuff that is inconsistent with our behavior, it tells us that, yeah, this is crap. This is actually bullshit. You've never eaten a salad in your life. Usually, well, what do you do then, right? So you want to become the person that eats salad. You realize it's a belief. You realize you need to adopt the belief system of the belief system, I am the person who eats salad. But then as you say that to yourself, there's this doubt in your head that's telling you, no, it's, you're not the person who eats salad. Well, people recommend sometimes that you silence the critic in the head. I personally do not vouch for this method because the critic is actually your friend in a sense. Just stops you from going off the rails and experiencing and living in delusions and saying things that you're not. It always brings one back to reality. So if then I'm advocating that you don't silence the critic. If I'm saying that, then what do you do now when the critic comes up and tells you, look, no, you're lying. You've never eaten salad. Well, the idea is to convince the critic. How do you convince the critic? Certainly not by debating him. That's not ideal. A much better way to do it would be to set up activities during the day that reinforce this belief system of the person that eats salad. For instance, you could set up 7 salad sessions in the day. At 8 a.m., you have a salad session. At 10 a.m., you have a salad session. At 12 a.m., you have a salad session. And we keep going that way 7 times a day. What happens? Every time you get a salad and put it in your mouth, you reinforce the belief that you're the person who eats salad. And you didn't need to argue with your brain because now the critic is like, we actually ate salad today. Maybe we do eat salad. And then the next session you eat salad again. You keep eating salad and over time the critic is actually convinced that, look, this is who we are. We eat salad. Look, we freaking ate salad for the whole week. We've eaten salad for the whole month, etc. And this is how one would adopt the belief system of, I am the person who eats salad. Notice that when we talk of beliefs, you're not really getting better at eating salad. You're not better today than you are yesterday at picking a bunch of leaves from a plate and putting them in the mouth. It's not the same kind of improvement as you'd experience in something like, let's say, playing soccer. Soccer is a complex skill. It involves a lot of steps, obviously. If yesterday you didn't know how to juggle the ball, it's possible that today you've learned how to juggle the ball. So in terms of skill level, I would say you're better today at juggling the ball than you are yesterday. So you're really a better soccer player. We can talk about what skills you've learned that are making you better today than you were yesterday. When it comes to something like eating salad, it's a little different because you're not really better at picking up leaves and putting them in your mouth. There has been an improvement. It's not an improvement in terms of becoming better at actually eating salad because it's not a complex thing. It's even hard to see what improvement means. All that's happened is every time you eat a salad, you're reinforcing the belief that you're eating a salad. So here it's a little different. You're reinforcing a belief, and in the case of practice, you're actually getting better at doing the skill involved because the skill is complex, but beliefs usually deal with things that are not complicated, like eating salad is not complicated. It's a subtle difference, so it's very easy to actually miss it and not realize it. Let's say someone says to themselves, I am a soccer genius. Is being an exceptional soccer player a belief or a practice? If let's say you've never played soccer before in your life, can you just get out there and start playing like Lionel Messi? and a really good soccer player? Well, the answer is no. If you've never played soccer before, it's a skill and it takes time. It takes 5-10 years to become really good at soccer. It's not the sort of thing you just wake up and do. It's actually genuinely a complicated thing. So in that sense then, would say that being an exceptional soccer player is not a belief. It's something that one practices. So let's say you actually wanted to be an exceptional soccer player. What beliefs should you have if having the belief that you're an exceptional soccer player is not the right one? The right belief to have would be something like, I am the sort of person that shows up on time for every practice. And whenever I am on the soccer pitch, I always give 100% of myself. These are things that are not complicated. Showing up on time for practice, you don't need any training for that. No lectures necessary. When it comes to giving your absolute best, again, this is something that is completely in your control and no training required. We instinctively know how to do this sort of thing. And so those are genuine beliefs. The belief that I am the person who shows up on time, and I'm the person who, when he gets on the soccer pitch, gives his 100%. This would be a sort of belief system that would enable you to actually become a soccer genius or an exceptional player if that is really what you want to do. But getting a practice, something like just declaring yourself a soccer genius, is actually delusion if you are not really a soccer genius. Because all would have to do is to put you in front of sufficiently strong opponents, and after losing and getting your ass whooped game after game after game, will dispel you of this delusion that you're somehow an exceptional soccer player. Because being an exceptional soccer player is not a practice, it's not a belief, it's actually a practice. So a different belief system would have to be adopted in order to play soccer or become the sort of person that plays soccer at a high level. But at the moment, if you've never practiced soccer before, holding it as a belief holding the belief I am a soccer genius is actually detrimental and could lead to various pains, physical and emotional. So now you're wondering, well, what does all of this have to do with consistency? Because after all, we're talking about consistency. All right, so let's put consistency in our framework of belief versus practice. Question becomes, is consistency a belief or a practice? Well, usually when we talk about consistency, as mentioned before, we're talking about consistency of action. So we need an action to talk about consistency. Let's use the same example we had before. We have some student, or you are in a physics class and you need to practice every day from 4 to 6, every single day for the entire semester. That's the activity. The activity is showing up at 4 p.m. and actually digging into the physics for 2 hours. Is this something you can do? Is it possible for you do you need any specialized training or some complex studies, or you need to read books in order to simply show up at 4 p.m. and actually start doing physics? Well, the answer is no. Showing up is something that we can all do. And staying there for 2 hours, sure. When it comes to actually doing well and understanding the physics, that's a different issue. Because that's a sort of skill and it takes time to do that. But showing up every single day consistently, well, that's something you can do. It's not complicated. That is something we would call a belief as opposed to a practice. So we see then that consistency is actually a belief. It is not a practice. What are the dangers of treating consistency as a practice? Well, for one, it's a waste of time. There are a lot of complicated things in the world out there. There is no need to take something that is not complicated, i.e. behaving consistently, and treat it as if it's something that one needs to practice for, and you need a 5-6 month plan in order to figure out how to become consistent. Absolutely not. This is a sad waste of time, because there are things that are actually complicated and one's energies need to be devoted towards those, as opposed to taking things that such as consistency, that are actually beliefs and things we can do without any specialized training, and treating them as if they're complicated. Now, a natural question that comes up is, we'll question, what beliefs should I hold? Because we've been talking about beliefs versus practice, and naturally you might be wondering, should you make everything that is a belief into actually an identity and a belief system of yours or not? So let's explore that issue for a while here. Now consider something like eating pork. Eating pork is not complicated. You have a piece of pork on your table, picking it up and putting it in your mouth and chewing is not a complex task. That is an example of something that is a belief. Just as not eating the piece of pork is also a belief. So, let's say you're deciding whether or not you should adopt the belief system of, I do not eat pork. Well, whether or not you adopt this belief system actually depends on your goals. Things that move you towards your goals are the sorts of things that one makes into a belief system, and things that do not are not turned into a belief system. So if you're a Muslim, for example, then not eating pork is an important belief system, because part of being a Muslim is not eating pork. But let's say you're not a Muslim, you have no qualms whatsoever with eating animals or pigs, then holding the belief system of I don't eat pork doesn't really serve any value, because it doesn't seem to be moving you towards any goal that you might have. So now we go into the session which I call reversal. By reversal, I mean that most social principles we know have reversals to them. They have situations in which it is better to act in the contrary of the principle. What do I mean exactly? Consider, let's say, fighting. Let's say you have the belief system that you don't fight, you don't punch people in the face. Well, is this a good belief system? Most of the time it is. It's a good principle to live by, because if you don't go around punching people in the face, then you're going to get along with them much better than if you actually were punching them in the face. So in general, yes, a nice principle to live by. But are there conditions where it's in your best interest to actually punch someone in the face? Answer is absolutely. What if the person is attacking you or attacking a family member? Then in that case, as a defensive instinct, it's a good idea to punch them in the face. So suddenly we have a situation where acting contrary to the belief of or the principle of I don't punch people is actually a good idea. The reversal is a good idea. Well, something else is killing. In general, as a general rule of thumb, it's good to not kill people. If you live in accordance with this principle, if you don't go around shooting people, then you're going to get along much better than if you're some sort of killer. But the question becomes, are there conditions and situations under which it's a good idea to kill? Absolutely. What if you're a soldier on a battlefield? Then if you don't kill and shoot your opponent, well, your opponent is going to kill you. So that becomes an example where the reversal of the principle of do not kill turns out to be the right course of action. So having understood what it means for something to have a reversal, we ask the natural question, does consistency have a reversal? Are there conditions under which it's a good idea to behave in an inconsistent manner? Well, the answer is, yeah. Well, think about, there are many situations in life where it is a good idea to behave unpredictably. What does it mean when someone behaves unpredictably? It means one moment they do this, tomorrow they do something else, another day they do something else. They're always doing something different. So you cannot predict their behavior, and they're behaving in an inconsistent manner. Of course, they're consistent in their inconsistency, but let's not get too philosophical. In as far as their actions are concerned and the things they're doing, when they're behaving unpredictably, they're behaving inconsistently. So are there situations where it's a good idea to behave unpredictably and therefore inconsistently? Well, the answer is yes. Consider, let's say you want to fight someone, and every time you go to fight this guy, the first time you go to fight him, he punches you in the face. Second time you try to fight him, he kicks you in the balls. Another time you try to fight him, he bites your arm. You try to fight him another time, he runs away. Another time he calls the freaking police. Well, this is really a formidable opponent if you think about it. This is the sort of person who will leave you unhinged because he's always changing his methods. It's not easy to predict what he's going to do next. His inconsistent behavior is turning out to be an advantage and helping him to accomplish his goal, which is to whoop your ass or to defeat you in a fight. There used to be a chess player called Tal Mikhail, a chess grandmaster and world champion for a period of 1 year. Very brilliant player known for his attacking, imaginative style. One of the things that Tal was very good at was making sacrifices. So usually, the strongest piece on a chessboard is the queen, and there are a bunch of other strong pieces like the rooks and the knights. And usually a chess grandmaster is not gonna give up his pieces unless he's guaranteed of an advantage. Tal Mikhail was different. Tal Mikhail was known to take gambles on the board, and sometimes in positions he'd make sacrifices that were referred to as irrational. He'd get a queen and sacrifice it, and he's taken a really powerful piece and given it away, and it's not clear what his advantage is. But usually, this unpredictable sort of play would really unhinge his opponents, and they'd start to unravel on the board and think that Tal has seen something they haven't and end up losing the game. On other occasions, the opponent would have captured most of his pieces, and the opponent is thinking to himself, yeah, there's nothing Tal is going to do. He'll resign any moment now. And then Tal would obviously shock them by pulling out an attack basically out of thin air with no resources. And sometimes this would again unhinge the opponent, and he'd actually end up winning a couple of these games. So the key strength of a player like Tal Mikhail was his unpredictability and imagination. It really enabled him to win many games, and it's actually what made him the world champion in his world championship match against the former world champion, the guy called Mikhail Botvinnik. So this inconsistent, unpredictable behavior turned out to be a great advantage. And it turns out that sometimes behaving inconsistently is actually the right course of action. So consistency does indeed have a reversal. Now you might be saying, Christian, come on, man. 1 minute you say we need to be consistent. Now you're saying I shouldn't be consistent. Which is which? Come on. Well, welcome to the game of life. Part of living well is being able to live with contradictions, having the capacity to hold two competing ideas in one's mind without feeling the need to resolve them. It's a concept called negative capability, and actually one of my great authors, Robert Greene, writes extensively about. He has a chapter, or at least a section of a chapter in his book about this concept of negative capability, the ability to keep contradictions in one's brain without resolving them. So, in particular, when we talk about the issue of consistency and you ask the question, well, should I act consistently or inconsistently? Well, it all depends on the position or the situation in which you find yourself. If you're in a situation where it is better to behave consistently, then behave consistently. If you're in a situation where it's better to behave inconsistently, then behave inconsistently. But picking one and saying, I always behave consistently, or I always behave inconsistently, is not grasping the full picture and living in a sort of delusion. So I've offered a lot of data here. We've really explored a lot concerning this whole idea of consistency and its reversal. And I might have sparked your interest here. Perhaps you want to study more or learn more about this topic and wondering what are the resources, what are the books you can read. So I'm going to talk a bit about the resources now. Well, there's a book called Eat That Frog by a guy called Brian Tracy. And this book is about how to stop procrastinating. If you think about it, procrastination is one of the first steps towards inconsistency. You had to do something today, but you say, I'm going to do it tomorrow, the day after, and then you end up not executing on what you said you'd execute, and you've now become inconsistent. So in this book, which I completely vouch for and highly recommend, this author, Brian Tracy, talks about how to avoid procrastination, and it touches on many of the topics that we've been dealing with in this podcast episode. Another resource I'd recommend is a book called Relentless by a guy called Tim Grover. Tim Grover was the coach of Michael Jordan. He was also the coach of Kobe Bryant. An extremely brilliant and intense guy. In particular, he specialized in getting exceptional sports people, especially basketball players, and making them even more exceptional. Now that is something that's actually very hard to do. It's easy to take someone who knows no basketball and make them better, because basically anything you teach them will be an improvement. But if you have someone who's at the level of a Michael Jordan, he's very good at passing, he's very good at dribbling, his on-court leadership is impeccable. When you get a player like that and you're trying to make them better, to do that, you have to be really, really good. And this world of taking elite people and making them even more elite is exactly where this guy Tim Grover lives. And in his book, Relentless, he talks about, in a sense, embracing one's instincts and doing things without instructions or following seminars and lectures, just trusting oneself and delivering and being the sort of person who, no matter what variables are thrown at him, will consistently deliver. It's something he calls a cleaner, which could be thought of as roughly as the equivalent of a relentless man. Anyways, if you're interested in this, please look it up. I will actually put these resources in the episode description. Now, Adi, we have really gone in depth on this topic of consistency. We have given you all the data, but ultimately we cannot make a decision for you and we cannot tell you what to do. It's really up to you to now synthesize this information, and we really hope that you come to a sound decision. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you found it to be of value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. When you subscribe and rate us, we rise in the search engine rankings, which means that someone on Stitcher or on iTunes who's looking for a podcast and who might find this podcast valuable will be able to see it much easier and benefit from it, as I hope you're benefiting from it. And every time you review us, there are people who are on the borderline, people who don't know whether they want to listen to this podcast or not. And a review from you would be able to persuade or dissuade them from listening to the podcast. And at the moment, actually, we have 0 reviews. So this is an opportunity for you to change that. If you have a friend who you think might benefit from this podcast, please tell them about it. Every episode, as you've seen today, is centered around a problem facing a community member. So please think about the biggest problem in your life right now and write to me about it. My email and all the details are actually still in the episode description. If you're having trouble deciding what the biggest problem in your life is, consider participating in a thought experiment. Suppose you met a magical sadist, and this magical sadist offered it's guaranteed that he's going to chop off your balls. Your balls are gone. There's nothing you can do about it. But in exchange for taking away your balls, he offers to solve one problem in your life. What problem would you have him solve? In other words, what problem in your life is so big right now that you'd consider losing your balls to see solved? Please message me your ball problem. Once again, my email is in the episode description. Now, if you like this podcast, please message me and send me an email. That way I can know and keep doing the things that you like and also stop doing the things that you do not like. If you hate this podcast or hate parts of this podcast, I'd especially like to hear from you as well. Please send me an email. That way I could figure out what you don't like and change it and make sure that podcast is better for future people who look at future episodes. Thank you very much for listening and hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.